Have you ever looked at two people, maybe friends, same birthday, the exact same age on paper, and yet one just seems full of energy, really thriving, while the other, well, they seem maybe a bit worn down, like they're aging faster? That age on your ID, that's really only part of the picture. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really fundamental question. How old are you really? We're going deep into the science of biological age. Think of it as your body's true cellular clock. And we're looking into this fascinating new understanding of personalized aging patterns. If you want the fast track on longevity science, well, this is definitely for you. We're joined by our expert today who's going to walk us through the science, especially these things called epigenetic markers that, well, seem to define our health path.
It's a really exciting field because aging is finally moving, beyond just philosophy. It's becoming something measurable, something scientific. The idea isn't just to accept aging anymore. It's about actively managing your health span, how long you live well.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. We all get chronological age, right?
Yeah.
It's just time since you were born. Simple number. Doesn't care if you run marathons or sit on the couch.
Yeah.
So what exactly is biological age, or BA? Why is that the number maybe we should be focusing on?
Exactly. Chronological age, it just ticks up. Every year, boom, you're 1 year older. Biological age, though, that's the real measure of your body's condition. It reflects how much your cells, your tissues, your organs have actually, well, aged or maybe deteriorated compared to the average person of that same chronological age. So the classic example works well here. You take two people, both 45 chronologically. One might have a biological age of, say, 38. They've got less cellular damage, less wear. The other could be 52 biologically, maybe due to lifestyle, environment, accelerated decline. That gap, 14 years in that case. That difference is incredibly valuable information for understanding health risk.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If biological age isn't just ticking off calendar days, how do we measure it? This true age inside us. It sounds like you need some kind of, microscopic clock, something looking at our DNA.
And that's pretty much what researchers have developed, yes. The most scientifically validated method right now is DNA methylation analysis.
DNA methylation. Okay, that sounds very technical.
Yeah.
But it seems crucial, so maybe we can break it down a bit.
Absolutely. So think of your DNA like the instruction manual for your entire body, right? DNA methylation involves these tiny chemical switches or tags that attach to specific parts of that manual. Now, these switches, they don't change the underlying DNA code itself, the actual instructions, but they control which genes get turned on and which get turned off, like dimmers on a light switch. And here's the key part. As we get older, the pattern of these on-off switches changes. And it changes in very predictable ways across our whole genome.
So the pattern itself is the clock, the way the switches shift over time.
Precisely. That's the core idea. This led to really groundbreaking work by Professor Steve Horvath. He developed what's famously known as the epigenetic clock. His team looked at, I think it was over 7,800 samples, a huge number, and they found they could estimate someone's age just by looking at this methylation data. And with pretty remarkable accuracy, too, usually within about 1.5 to 3.6 years. It's solid evidence that our aging process leaves a distinct, measurable fingerprint right there on our DNA.
That level of precision is pretty amazing. But let's connect it back to, well, everyday life. What are the health implications? Why should someone listening care if their biological age turns out to be, say, 5 years older than their driver's license says?
Right. This is the so what factor.
Yeah.
And it's huge. Biological age is one of the single most powerful predictors of health outcomes we have. We know quite clearly now that a higher BA is strongly linked to the risk and severity of many chronic diseases. For instance, there's research, local research actually, showing that for every single year your biological age is higher, your risk of developing colon cancer goes up by about 12%.
12% per year. Wow.
Yes, independently. It's also a very strong predictor for things like hypertension, cardiovascular issues, many of the big ones. It tells you not just how long you've been alive, but kind of how vulnerable your system is right now.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. Your sources suggest we don't just age uniformly. Like, it's not one number for the whole body.
Yeah.
We might have different biological ages depending on the organ. This idea of aging types. Can you elaborate on that?
That's a really crucial point. The body isn't just one single entity aging at one speed. There was a major international study, a huge collaboration, using over 15,000 human tissue samples. And they essentially created what you could call an aging map of the human body. And it clearly showed these staggering differences. Different organs definitely age at different rates.
Okay, give us the highlights then. Which part of the body is winning the race to old age and which one's lagging behind?
Well, the results are quite surprising in some ways. The study found the fastest aging organ consistently was the retina, the tissue in the back of your eye.
Yeah.
Yes. And conversely, the organ that showed the slowest aging rate was the uterine cervix. Other fast agers included things like the aorta, the big artery from your heart, and parts of the digestive system like the stomach.
The retina. Huh.
Yeah.
That's wild. But maybe it makes sense. Constant light exposure, oxidative stress maybe. Does this mean, like, are we accelerating our eye aging just by staring at screens all day? Or not wearing sunglasses? Does this give us a clear target?
It absolutely could. The retina is incredibly metabolically active. It needs a lot of oxygen. It's constantly processing light, dealing with potential damage. So yes, factors like blue light exposure, UV damage, oxidative stress, they likely play a big role. This finding really shifts the conversation from just aging in general to protecting specific vulnerable parts. And beyond just the eye, this organ-specific view can give us early warnings. For example, certain molecular signs of accelerated aging found specifically in brain tissue might indicate a much higher risk for cognitive diseases like Alzheimer's, potentially years before any symptoms show up.
Okay, which brings us back to the cause, right?
Yeah.
If, as the sources suggest, only about 10% of how long we live is down to our genes, that leaves a massive 90% determined by other stuff, lifestyle, environment. Why is that 90% so powerful? What's happening at the cellular level that we're influencing so much?
That 90% really is the key area where we have influence. And probably the most fundamental mechanism driving those differences, especially accelerated aging, is mitochondrial functional decline.
Mitochondria. Okay, quick biology refresher maybe. Why are they so important for aging? It sounds like protecting them is crucial if we want to manage that 90%.
Exactly. Mitochondria are often called the power plants of our cells. Think of them that way. Their main job is to take the nutrients we eat and convert them into energy, ATP, that the cell needs to do everything repair, replicate, function. When mitochondria start to become dysfunctional, which can happen due to chronic stress, poor diet, lack of sleep, toxins, all that stuff, they produce less energy. That's bad enough. But worse, they start churning out more harmful molecules called free radicals, or reactive oxygen species. This creates oxidative stress, damages the cell from the inside out, damages DNA, proteins, lipids. It just cascades. So managing mitochondrial health through lifestyle choices really gets to the root of slowing down that cellular wear and tear.
Right. Okay, so given how exciting this science is, it's no surprise biological age tests are everywhere now. You can order kits online. But we need a bit of a reality check here. How reliable are these commercial tests that people might be buying?
Yeah, extreme caution is definitely needed here. While the basic science behind the epigenetic clock, the methylation patterns, is quite solid, the current commercial tests you can buy, they have, frankly, very high levels of uncertainty. There was a key study in 2022 that really highlighted this. Researchers took the exact same biological sample and ran it through 6 different commonly used aging clocks, the kinds that underpin these commercial tests. The results they got back for the same sample differed by up to 9 years.
Wait, hang on. A 9-year difference from the same blood sample, just using different clocks. If the scientific tools themselves don't agree, how can anyone rely on a commercial test result for, like, actual health decisions?
Right.
Doesn't that huge margin of error make them almost meaningless?
It's a very fair and critical point. It really underscores that these tests are absolutely not ready for prime time in a clinical setting for making medical decisions. There are a couple of main reasons for this inconsistency. First, it's really hard to validate these biomarkers across the entire human lifespan. A clock that's developed using data mostly from people in their 40s and 50s might just not work accurately for someone who's 80. The biology changes. And second, believe it or not, there isn't even a single unified scientific agreement on what aging is fundamentally. Is it primarily about losing function? Or is it more about accumulating damage? Different clocks tend to measure slightly different aspects, leading to these varied results.
So the absolute bottom line for anyone listening has to be, treat those results, whether they make you feel amazing or terrible.
Okay.
Treat them as maybe interesting, but purely anecdotal information for now.
Precisely. That's the safest approach. The risk of misinterpreting these numbers is really quite high. Get a great score, you might feel invincible and maybe slack off on healthy habits. That's counterproductive. Get a bad score, you might feel doomed. Get anxious, and maybe give up trying. That's equally bad. Think of them as maybe a very general reference point, perhaps motivation, but certainly not a definitive judgment on your health or your future.
Okay, so if the tests are shaky, let's pivot back to what we can control. The actionable stuff. What actually works? What can people do to positively influence these methylation patterns, protect those mitochondria, and actually nudge that biological age number down?
It comes back to that 90%, the lifestyle factors. These are the interventions with the most solid data behind them. For example, we know that DNA methylation patterns are so sensitive they can predict whether someone smokes with something like 86.5% accuracy,
Wow.
and predict their alcohol consumption habits with around 74.3% accuracy. That just shows you at a molecular level how profoundly these habits impact our cellular aging. Eliminating smoking, moderating alcohol, huge factors. Beyond that, managing chronic stress is absolutely vital. Stress hormones directly interfere with cellular repair processes.
And I assume movement, exercise, particularly strength training, is high on that list too.
Oh, absolutely non-negotiable. We know muscle mass naturally declines with age sarcopenia, and some research indicates this decline might start earlier in certain populations than we used to think. For instance, studies looking at Korean men found measurable muscle decline starting around age 35, which is quite a bit earlier than typically seen in, say, U.S. groups. This just highlights how important regular strength training is throughout life. And it's not just about building bigger muscles. The active resistance training itself sends positive signals that can influence DNA methylation.
So it really sounds like the fundamentals, the basics, still hold true. But now we have a deeper scientific layer, understanding why they work. Good nutrition, getting enough quality sleep, regular movement, protecting your skin from UV damage. These are still the most reliable tools in the toolbox for slowing down those cellular clocks.
They are the absolute foundation. And looking ahead, the exciting shift in research isn't just about measuring aging anymore. It's moving towards really understanding the mechanisms in more detail, like we've discussed. And the focus of future longevity efforts, like you see in big initiatives such as the U.S. XPRI's health span, it's moving beyond just looking at molecular biomarkers towards actually assessing and improving real-world physical functions, muscle strength, cognitive sharpness, immune system robustness, how well you actually function. So, wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway? It seems that the crucial insight is that biological age, while maybe tricky to measure perfectly right now, is a really powerful concept. It's a critical health indicator, much more meaningful than just the candles on your cake. And understanding your potential aging type, knowing if maybe your cardiovascular system, your brain seems to be aging faster, that's incredibly powerful knowledge for tailoring how you manage your health. The goal isn't just adding years to life, but adding healthy, functional life to those years, right?
That's the perfect summary. That's health span. This biological age information, even conceptually, should act as a compass. It should motivate positive changes today, focusing on those habits you can control. It should absolutely not be a reason to dwell on the past or get fixated on a potentially inaccurate test score. Put your energy into those manageable lifestyle factors: diet, exercise, sleep, stress management, because that's where the vast majority, that 90% of your longevity potential lies, outside of your fixed genetics.
That 90%, that really sticks with me. And when you layer on the fact that the fastest aging organ seems to be the retina, something we constantly expose to light, screen, stress, it really drives home how much control you potentially have. So here's a thought to maybe mull over. Thinking about your own body's potential vulnerabilities, which of your current daily habits, the ones squarely in that 90% zone of control, are actively accelerating or hopefully protecting the specific parts of you that science suggests might be most susceptible to faster aging. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating science of your true age. We really hope you feel better informed and maybe inspired to invest in your long-term health. We'll catch you next time.